Hello and welcome. In this course, we'll be going over the essentials for data modeling in BettyBlocks. In this course, we will be creating the data model for the project management application. You can view the demos from the course as a standalone to have an idea on how data modeling in BettyBlocks works, or you can follow along the essentials path to create a project management application together with me. The image you see in your screen right now is the data model we will be creating. You can pause the video and have a look at the data model and try and create it yourself, or you can follow along and create it together with me. Let's go. To get to our data model overview, you first look on the left-hand side of your application and search for the data model icon. When you click on the data model icon, the quick view for your data models opens up, and you can click on the models overview button to go to the overview for your models. This will give you two overview possibilities for your data models. And your model overview can be seen in a record view, as seen in front of us right now. And you can also click on the schema view button. And this gives you a more visual side of your models. As you can see, there are two models already: our role model and our user model. Let me throw in a quick disclaimer because these are very important models for your application. Your role model and your user model are used for authorization and authentication, and for you as a user with your BettyBlocks account to log into your application. So leave these as they are. We'll go over creating our own models for our project management application. So let's create our first model. Go out of the schema view that we have and into the record view for your models. And click on the new model button in the top right corner. This is how we are going to create our first model. And the first model we are going to create is our project model. This model will hold multiple projects, but it will be a singular project object each time. So every item within this model will be one project. So that's also what we will be calling the model name. So call it project, and look out because you really want to use the naming conventions. So make the first letter a capital letter. Click on create model. And there you have created your first model. What you see over here is your first model that already has some properties. These are important properties to make sure that every single item within your project or within your project model is unique. So every single project that will be created in your application will have a unique ID, a unique time that it's been created, and a unique updated at time to keep it apart from each other. Leave these as they are because you can use them for checks, such as when has my project been created, but it's also important for your application to know these items that you see in here. So let us add our own properties first for the project management application. The project model holds a couple of items that define a specific project. So a project will have a project name, a project description, a project status, a project end date, and a project image. We're going to add these properties by clicking on the new property button in the top right. So click on the button and it opens up a new property overview. Well, first things first, and that is that we're going to fill in the name of the property. In this case, it will be our project name. So write down name. Don't forget to use the naming conventions. Always make sure that the first letter is a capital. Aside from that, we can pick a type for our property. In this case, we want to write down a project name. So right now we are saving this project name in a text single line type. We could also save it in a date property type or in a image property type or a number property type, but they don't match the way we want to save it because we want to give our project name a regular name like project number 1 or the best project. This is something you cannot save in a number type, you cannot save this in an image type, or you cannot save this in any other type apart from the text types. Well, we don't want any specific annotations for the project name and we don't want multiple lines to be used for a project name. So we're going to use the text single line. And it's really important that you make sure that you pick the correct type for the property you are using. So the first property will be our name property with the type text single line. And you can save this by clicking the save button down below. So after saving your property, there is something else we need to do with, or want to take a look at. And that is validations. Because right now we can create a project with a name, but this name it doesn't have any restrictions to it. And what we can do is we can set a validation on it. And we can do that by going to the validations tab when you've clicked on a property. So click on the validations tab, then there's the edit settings button, and this opens up a pop-up. This is our old IDE in which you can make certain changes. Take a good look because we'll be switching between IDEs every now and then. So what you see over here is the validations settings option for a property. And here you see options like validate presence, validate uniqueness, and all kinds of validations. And the most important validations for us are the two validations you see in the top. This is validate presence and validate uniqueness. This checks if when someone enters a new project in our application, if it's present, so if there is any name filled in the input field, because we don't want any empty project names to be sent in, and if it's unique. So every project name needs to be unique. So when I create project number 1, someone else cannot create project number 1 because it's no longer unique. So for our application, we'll be selecting both these options. So validate presence and validate uniqueness. This will make sure that someone has to fill in a project name and that it will always be unique. Click on save in the top right and you can close the tab for the validations. The next property that we'll be adding will be the description property. We want our project to have a description. So click on the new property button and write down description. There we go. And this time, well, we don't really want it to be a single line text type. We do want it to be a text type because our description will be written down in text, but I want it to be a multi-line type because I want to give the user or the customer who is going to create a new project the room to, well, write down multiple lines of description if he or she wants to do that. And then save the second property. The third property that I want to add is the end date property because I want my project to have an assigned end date. So click on new property, write down end date, and again, make sure that the conventions align and that your first letter is a capital. But this time, I don't want it to be a text type. We have a really nice type for dates, which is date and date time. The date field will be just a plain date, so a single day, and the date time field will be a date with a time. Well, in this case, we want our project to end a certain date, so I'm going to use the date type. And the cool thing is that we can also use some values, some default values for certain properties. We can use, well, no default value, we can use a static value or a dynamic value. In this case, if someone does not fill in the value for a project, we can assign a value ourselves. You can do that by clicking on the calendar and just selecting a value. So let's say that May the 29th will be the end date of every project that we are going to create. But if May the 29th has passed, well, this is no longer an option. So we can set a relative date. And this is something that we can do, for example, let's say next month. So every time someone creates a project and does not fill in an end date, the automatically set value will be next month. So a month from right now, the moment the project is created, will be the end date. So this way you can assign some static values to newly generated projects. This is nice to create some data automation in your application. So let's save this. Oh, and of course, don't forget to trigger the apply default when blank switch. Save it again. And there we go. We've made a little change. Because if you do not turn the button on, default, the default value that we have set, will not be applied when someone leaves the date field blank. So let's go to another property that we want our project to have, which is the status property. Well, a status property in this case will be a list with multiple items, such as our project can have the status of new, it can have a status of in progress, and it can have the status of complete or done. And we can save that in, well, we cannot really save that in a single line because we would have to write the status, and we don't really want to write something, we want to select the status. And we can do that by using a list property. A list property will give us a drop down with certain list items with multiple items that we can select from. We're going to call this our status property, and we're going to add some values for our project, such as the new value, the in progress value, and the done value. And it's also nice because we can color code this, and you can do that by clicking on the paint bucket. And well, let's say that my new status will be BettyBlocks red, because red means it's important. We will need to take a look at it normally. I'll make in progress honey orange, and I'll make done green, because I like myself some nice green when something's done. That means it's good, it's go, it's positive. So done is green. Right now, we've created a list with 3 separate statuses and some color coding with it. Click on a default value. We can do that by clicking on the static value, and that is the value that will be set once someone creates this project. So that means that when someone opens up a new project, this first status that will be set is new. Someone can always change this, but this way, when a project is created, new will be the first assigned status, unless you change it yourself. And I click on save, and that's our 4th property added. And for our last property, I would like to give my project an image as well. So let's click on new property, and let's go to type selection immediately. For the image property, well, the most easy to go with thing is the image property itself. I'll call this the image property as well. And in here you see another option that we can pick from, which is file extensions and public yes or no. Allowed file extensions means that you allow a user to upload certain files, such as JPEGs, GIFs, BMPs, or PNGs. If I don't want anyone to upload a GIF to my application, I can just remove this and save it. But if I do want to allow people to upload GIFs because I really like them and I think they're cool, I can just add it again, and this will be another file extension that someone can upload into his or her project. The public button is used to make your uploaded image public, yes or no. If you turn this on, then your files will be accessible, well, to anyone who has the link. If that's okay with you, then you can turn it on to public. If you want to keep it private, if you want to keep the file to only the people who can access your application, turn off the public button, just like it's right now. Leave it like this. And save the image property. And there we go. We have our first project model with the items that describe our project. Our project has a name, our project has a description, an end date, a status, and an image, by which we can recognize a single project in our project management application.